All right, all right, all right. Sorry for the delay. As you can see, new setup, so I had to get everything all set up to where I could be able to stream here. Glad you could join us. Very excited. First stream in a long time, but the boys are back in town. Jay will be in here very soon. You know, Chris Griffin, he's always late, and PG always on time. PG, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You know what? It's been a rough day at work, but I'm glad to be able to come do this, use it as a stress relief, and talk some college football, which seems like we're only like 26 days away from
It's
actual football.
right around the corner, and that's what this is all about, man. This is as close to therapy as any of us get, and it's free, so that's what makes it even better. But there's a lot for us to talk about, right? And where do we begin? Because we have recruiting to talk about, we have the Pac-12 to talk about, we have the ACC to talk about, we have the Mountain West to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, you know football is here when I'm sitting here telling you we have Mountain West to talk about, but we also have the coaches poll that just dropped, and I take a lot of interest in this, man, because it's one of those things where it's absolutely meaningless in the best way possible. It's meaningless, but at the same time, we all go crazy over these lists, right? Every year they come out, and I constantly get comments, these lists don't matter. And I agree with you. I do. At the heart of it, I do agree with you. They really don't matter. But we're still going to talk about them, right? Because it generates intrigue. And like clockwork, the man of the hour, Jay, is here. Jay, how you doing?
What's good, everybody? Sorry about that, Ty. I just realized I am an hour in time difference from you all right now, and forgot that since it's 4:30 here, it's actually 5:30 in Oklahoma. So I'm looking at my clock like, man, let me get a couple. I'm gonna record a couple things, and then I'm gonna jump on with Ty. And I looked, and I got a notification that Around the Table just went live. I'm like, wait a minute.
Wait a
Oh,
minute.
so my bad, everybody. I'm late because I don't know how to tell time. So thanks for having me, though. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Jay's looking around like, wait, I'm live right now. Hold up, hold up. We're at this bit. Man, hey, we got a lot to talk about. I don't know if you caught the intro. We got so much to dive into. Y'all already know there's no script going around. So we were trying to decide what we're gonna lead with. I think coaches poll is the most appropriate because it's the most meaningless, meaningful thing out right now. And
Agreed.
look, let's talk about where there's some intrigue here, right? In the coaches poll. I know the Oklahoma fans. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and start this off because there is a little bit of a interesting caveat in terms of what year your head coach is going into, where you're ranked relative to a previous head coach y'all had, where y'all were ranked heading into that year. Oklahoma debuts 19 in the coaches poll. PG, I'm going to start with you. What are you thinking about the list in general? What do you think about Oklahoma's placement on the list?
I think Oklahoma's placed just right, but personally, in my opinion, I wanted Oklahoma not to be ranked. And the reason why is because they need to prove themselves, and this team is very unproven. Now, the coaches poll is intriguing because Texas Tech is number 24 on this list, and I think Texas Tech has one of the brightest futures in college football with all of this college football expansion going on and OU and Texas leaving the conference. And Texas Tech has these new facilities coming out. They're in the state of Texas, and there's a bunch of talent there. I think Texas Tech is one of those teams that you're going to see start to really be on the rise. And so Texas Tech being at number 24 after the good season they had last year intrigues me a little bit because that tells me that a bunch of other people around the country are on the same page with Texas Tech. And then, of course, Wisconsin at 21, one of the other most intriguing teams going into the season with all they got at the quarterback position and the wide receiver. They got Phil Longo for their offensive coordinator. So now it looks like Wisconsin is not only trying to focus on defense, but they're trying to get better on offense. So it's like, could somebody else in the Big Ten really be trying to rival Ohio State and Michigan? And like I said, Texas Tech and the Big 12, it's going to be an intriguing year, but I think OU, they're probably placed just right. But from a fan's perspective, I wanted OU to be unranked because I wanted them to come in with the expectation it's the world against you. We need to prove ourselves to get back to the top.
To quote Nick Saban, rat poison. There's something to that rat poison. You get to sit there and say, oh, the world doesn't believe in us. Let's show them something. Now, look, I have every reason to believe Brent Venables will be saying that anyways, just coming off of the year. It'll be a prove-it year. He just kind of strikes me as that dude. defensive coordinators don't blitz at the rate Brent Venables blitzes at, and they aren't show me dudes, right? So I have no doubt that will be the attitude at Oklahoma. Jay, it's interesting because I want to hear your perspective on Oklahoma, but PG highlighted another team that you have been reaching out to me, trying to get me to really catch up on a lot of their film, really dive deep into, and that's Wisconsin, a team that you have been very excited about. So I want to hear your thought on Oklahoma, but I also want to hear your thoughts on PG's take on Wisconsin, because I think it's very interesting. And then, as always, man, you already know, I just want you to rant and rave about the list as you feel free.
Definitely. So there's a few of them that jumped out to me in that same place, but let me start with Oklahoma. PG, I vehemently disagree with you on this one, and this is a reason why I will vehemently disagree with you on this place. Oklahoma at 19th is exact same as they were back in 2000. Oklahoma going into the second year with a left-handed quarterback is the exact same thing that happened in 2000. Oklahoma being basically overlooked is the exact same way they did in 2000. And we know how 2000 ended. So this is directly in line with the plan. We are going to stick to the plan in this entire conversation. This is what we wanted. Oklahoma wanted to be here because, is there a coincidence? I think not. This is exactly how the universe wanted things to go. Now that I'm off my BS, I'll be honest, I love it at 19 because of my BS, but at the same time, this is a prove-it moment. This team has been built. This team has looked like it should have been better than it was last year. And if a couple of balls here and there fell our direction, this is a 9 to 10 win team. Now we've got a team that instead of 100 players and about half of your coaching staff trying to figure out an offense and a defense together, you've got about 50 dudes that know it, and they're teaching the other 50 dudes at the same time, and the entire coaching staff knows it. That's the thing that comes together with Oklahoma. And so I expect a performance this year that we should have got last year. I don't know where it lands at the end. I technically see at least one loss, but I'm not sure. But I can see this team flying up to the top and actually ending with a double-digit win season and doing some special stuff. So that's the only place I disagree with you on, PG. But you're right. They usually play better when they're not ranked. But being at this spot still gives us 2000 feel. Now, let's pull into this Wisconsin one. Wisconsin at 21, man, they got a lot of faith in Luke Fickell. I'm just going to say that. Wisconsin underachieved last year, and they made some movements around on that roster. But they also have, 3 quarterbacks now? And looks like Tanner Mordecai is the dude that's going to run things. Now, I like Tanner because, he's a former Sooner. He played with SMU. We've got a little affinity to him, but I do not believe that Wisconsin should have come in here ranked at 21. I think they should have been unranked just so they can give us that provement. I want the show me too. I need you to prove what you're going to do there, especially with the changes and that he had to do there at Wisconsin. But they're one of the more intriguing teams in the Big Ten. I'm actually excited about them a lot more than I am Nebraska, which is kind of surprising, to be honest.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. And that's the reason why, Ty, we're going to get together and talk about them before the season starts. There's something about them, and I don't know what it is, but there's something about Wisconsin that feels like they may start to finally make waves that they haven't done in a while. Now, let me rant and rave about a couple of spots that bothered me as far as ratings. Why is Florida State so low? Florida State needs to be a top 6 team in the country. They've returned just about all their best players on that roster that won 10 games last year. And I promise you, they're going to give LSU the business in that first game of the season. I think they win the ACC. They are the team that's top to bottom, to me, the best one in the ACC this year. Clemson still's got dogs, and Clemson's still going to do their things. Cade Klubnik, you still got to prove to me that you're ready to take the reins, especially with the Garrett Riley offense. Now, Garrett Riley's offenses are legit, and they're really very simple and easy, and is made to get everybody open. But Jordan Travis was a monster last year, and he's got another year in that system. I think he's going to lead that team a lot deeper than we expect. And you got Jared Verse on the defensive side. You've got the transfer from Western Michigan on the other side on the defensive line. They stacked up that defense way more than they did the offense, and the offense is still good. Florida State's the one that shocked me that's so low. They should have been higher. Penn State's too high. They need to be lower. LSU, honestly, probably should move up too. I love Bama. I think Bama should be lower to start. They're up there because of notoriety, because of their Alabama. They're up there because of their name. They're going to perform. That's not the concern for me. But I think with the quarterback situation we talk about ad nauseum, they probably should be a little bit lower. So getting off my rant full-fledged, I think if anything, Oklahoma's in a good spot. Wisconsin probably should be unranked. Give me Florida State higher. LSU as well. Bama a little bit lower. And I'm kind of upset Texas is in the top 10. I kind of wanted them to be top 10. So when we beat them, it's beautiful to watch them go and tumble down. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at that. Give me your best, Ty.
Conspiracy theorist. You are a conspiracy theorist.
You're welcome.
Don't be giving the fan base national championship hope, okay? I don't need that kind of.
Oh, I'm sucking the opium, baby.
This is how we know college football season is right around the corner, because we have reignited the parallels between this Oklahoma team and the 2001. I might not be an Oklahoma fan, but I'm here for the hopium. Let me unpack this. There's a lot where we agree on. I don't know that I'm more intrigued about Wisconsin than I am about Nebraska, but that might be a little bit of a personal bias thing here. I grew up with a dad that was a Nebraska fan. Mom was the Alabama fan. So I watched his pain, right? Like I almost feel like at this point, it's a personal investment for me to see them turn it around, because I remember Eric Crouch there. Like I remember those days lightly. I was very young, but I do remember it. So I'm very intrigued about Nebraska, but no doubt about Wisconsin. Florida State is where you and I completely agree. They went 10-3 last year. They are going to be a very good team. They return a lot, and let's really break down the transfer portal here, because they didn't have a 1,000-yard wide receiver last year. They almost did, but they didn't. So what do? They go out and get Keon Coleman from Michigan State. Now, granted, I'm not sitting here telling you he was the 1,000-yard receiver at Michigan State, but he was a very, very good receiver at Michigan State, stacking more weapons. You already have an athletic quarterback, a quarterback that proved to be effective, and you already had wide receivers that got active. Now you stack a 6'4" playmaker over there, a guy that went for over 150 yards on 5 touches against Michigan. On the defensive side, Jay, to your point, they also have Fentrell Cypress from Virginia that transferred over, a very talented cornerback. So they added some guys now. On top of all of that, Jaheim Bell from South Carolina to Florida State. And Jay, you remember on SEC Connect, that was my big question for South Carolina. I love everything they're doing, but like, how do you mitigate the Jaheim Bell loss, right? Because even though if you look at his numbers, it wasn't stupid production, he was a very necessary force within that offense. Now he's at Florida State. Very interested in what Florida State does. The only thing I can say is that it's the coach's lack of faith in the traditional sustainability of the ACC over the past 5 years. But like, other than that, I completely agree with you. I think Florida State should have been higher. That game against LSU, I'm calling it now, circle it. You are not going to want to miss that game. I don't care if you root for either of these teams. That's the one you're going to want to watch. Let's talk about Alabama, because I'm not going to argue with where Bama's ranked, right? Sitting at top 3, because I do agree. I think this is going to be a prove-it year for Bama. But at the same time, I was thinking Bama would come in here at about 4 or 5, if I'm being honest, Jay. That was kind of where I thought. So they're not far off, but I can't sit here in good faith and say, oh, you're totally off base if you look at me and say you think they're a spot or 2 away from where they should be, right? They miss the college football playoffs. They lose Bryce Young. They lose Will Anderson. And you can sit here and tell me, but Ty, they always lose a lot of players to the NFL. Nick Saban keeps the machine moving. You're 100% correct. No doubt about it. But at the same time, Bryce is different, man. Bryce is a different cat. They don't have the quarterback situation figured out, though I have faith in any of the quarterbacks they trot out there. But there are questions that we do need to acknowledge. But once again, kind of like what PG said, these Bama teams seem to do real well when Nick Saban has rat poison at his disposal. And I was kind of hoping, for rat poison's sake, that Bama would be at about that 5 to 6, so that way Nick Saban could say, oh, they don't even think you're going to the playoffs, right? Plaster it all over the walls. So I really can't I can't disagree with you there, man. If I'm looking at a team, though, that really stood out to me on this list, guys, we got to talk about this number 2 team. And not because I disagree, but because what a big year it is for Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh's not there for how many games? I mean, Michigan is a super interesting team this year. The question, I think, many people are wondering, and especially Michigan fans, should they have been number one? Personally, I'm going to go ahead and interject my opinion here. No, I know Georgia has to replace a lot. You have to dethrone the king. They've won it back to back. They hold
national
the crown.
champions should always be number one.
Always.
Until they are beaten.
Take the crown off their head.
I struggle with that only because
Fair.
when you have a national champion that returns and loses a lot of production, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that's when I'm okay with usually dropping them to like 2 or 3. But they're required to be a top 3 team just because they did come in.
They lost a lot of production last year and still, I mean, it wasn't the offensive production, but they lost a lot of production and still went and won another national championship. So I get it when people say like, well, we shouldn't do it off last year's results. The national champion should be the only one given a benefit of doubt over last year's results because they are the king. They are at the top of the hill, and nobody's been able to take them down. This has been 2 straight national championships. So I have a hard time taking that away from that team until they show you otherwise.
So, and my point behind the production is that the most important thing you need on your team to win a national championship is what? A quarterback. And if you're replacing a quarterback that's been there for 2 straight years to go to 2 straight titles, I'm very hard pressed to believe the next quarterback's going to walk in and win it because everybody's seen that struggle before. For example, Bama has seen that before. They didn't win with every quarterback starting at that position. They brought in quarterbacks and they didn't win with them. It happens. And so because of that, that's why I'm not inclined to give that benefit of a doubt when you're breaking in new quarterbacks. And they have the same problem as everybody else. They got like 3 quarterbacks and they're still trying to decide now. Right now, Beck is the one that we're believing is going to be starting quarterback, but they've got other 5-star quarterbacks that's been there for a few years and they're not winning out. That concerns me. That concerns me if you walk in there as a 5-star quarterback and you're not able to win because Georgia struggled with that. So until they bring up another walk-on quarterback that's walked on to the team twice and he walks in there and wins it all or wins a whole bunch of games for them, I'm worried about the way Georgia looks.
Now, here's the thing. You're going to say that, and they're going to trot out some cat that was a water boy for the first 3 years of Kirby's tenure and then has since walked on to the football team to lead them to another national championship. You, good sir, have single-handedly doomed college football with your
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that if we get it, because that's the thing about it, Ty, is right now they're trotting out some acclaimed quarterbacks and 4- and 5-star guys that until I know that there's a walk-on there ready to go, I'm not worried about that take. Now, if you tell me tomorrow that, hey, rumor has it, they just got a transfer that's walking on at quarterback and he's a 7th-year senior, then I'm going to go ahead and just retract my statement.
Fair enough.
I just think it's hard for any quarterback to not be successful when you're throwing to the guys that they're going to be throwing to.
Well, we said the thing about Ohio State, too. The other thing behind that coin is, and we even said that about Bama at one point. The other side of that coin is that who's calling the plays? I mean, Mike Bobo, not to dig on, Georgia fans, but he was an analyst last year. So he was around the tight ends and people know who he is, but for the most part, they're going to run a different offense.
Here's the thing, though. Bobo was an offensive coordinator at Georgia before, and when he was there, They put up about 40 points a game as well. So it's not like when he was there before, that was an offense that wasn't just putting up big points. They were scoring a lot. I do agree with you.
Traditional Georgia, though. Traditional Georgia has been really good, no doubt. Just not over the hump. The question is Bobo's offense going to get them over the hump? That's what I want to know.
Fair question. And
here's the deal. We can let Georgia have the number 1 spot because they're not going to win it all this year. They're not going to go undefeated. They're going to lose to somebody, whether it's because I think they play Clemson this year, right?
Yes.
So they're probably going to either lose to Clemson or at Bama or somewhere like that. Like they're going to lose to somebody. It's going to happen. Just let it simmer. It's going to happen. Let them have the number 1 spot.
They don't play Clemson this year.
No Clemson this year. They play at Tennessee.
Last year's schedule.
I think that's next year's schedule.
No, I think there was something about a potential Clemson matchup, but it's not this year. Georgia's schedule is very, 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 very favorable. Very favorable. Let me hit some comments real quick, and then we're going to keep this up. Vincent Foster says, Roll Tide, I'm new to your YouTube. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us. The two gentlemen with me here as well, they also do YouTube content. Awesome stuff. Preston Gant with the PG show. And then we have Jay with Unfair Sports. After you leave here, be sure to follow them both. They're on here all the time. Jeremy says Bama is going to run the ball and make defenses quit. That's exactly what I want to happen. Joyless murder ball. Van, I saw this comment, and I very much well agree with you. 3 of the 6 best teams are breaking in new quarterbacks, but all 3 have the talent to ride it out until they figure it out. No doubt. And that's where I think the question for Alabama is. I'm not mad that they're ranked number 3, but I certainly don't think it's a crazy take to be like, oh, well, they had a lot of questions. They had Bryce Young and they were still an undisciplined team. How does that look? There are questions, but we do know that the talent and history would prove they're going to perform very well this year. Very excited to see that. Very, very excited to see that. Eric says, how are you doing, Ty? Roll Tide. Very happy for you to be here, Eric. Thank you for everyone in here. Van says, if Georgia starts too far from what makes them good, they could fall on their face in big games. Yeah, no doubt. Part of Georgia's dominance is being able to control the ball and keep their defenses fresh. And this is something both PG and Jay and I, we've talked about ad nauseum. What made Georgia so difficult to beat last year was the balance they brought to the table, right? There's a reason why Michigan got handled by TCU and Georgia blew the doors off of them, because if you were TCU, you felt confident that if we can bottle Michigan's rush attack, we have a chance in this game. If you bottle Georgia's rushing attack, you still have a lot to worry about, right? Like, they were very, very balanced. Going to be interesting. Dang Trojan says that logic is why I don't think it's crazy for USC to win the Natty. If USC makes the playoff, they will have the best quarterback by a mile. They certainly will have the best quarterback. If the defense improves even to a top 40 defense in the nation, they will be dangerous, right?
If USC is a top 40 defense, I think they can get to the Natty. I don't think it wins it. And we said this at Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley was there.
That's exactly where I was going.
Gets you to Oklahoma.
I think that's
gets you to a Natty. I don't know if it's good enough to beat a Georgia or an Alabama, though.
It depends who they face, right?
Yeah, like
who they face.
If USC is facing Georgia or Bama in the championship game and it's somebody else, all bets are off at that point.
Great comment, man. Great comment.
Let's unpackage that really quick, what Dane Trojan said. And this isn't us trying to throw shade at Lincoln Riley. So make sure you remember that, bro. You know, we got love for you and we like to go back and forth. But no, on a serious note, that is exactly what we've said as Oklahoma fans. That has been exactly our biggest problem that we had with him here is, and we said the same thing about Oklahoma's defense. They were going to shock everybody too when Grinch first got here. And I'm telling you, you're literally regurgitating everything we've said based upon the way that we've seen the Grinch defense and everything back in those days. This is your problem. Caleb Williams is going to carry you all to another great season. I guarantee it. He's that elite. And that's what Lincoln Riley does. That's what Lincoln Riley does as a coach. I went back and looked at the numbers in 16, 17, and 18. Oklahoma put up the number 1 offense by advanced measures on just about every single metric you can think of. They were the tops. The problem is that at a certain point, that quarterback gets worn out going into the playoffs and those defenses are prepared. And Dane Trojan, I'm going to tell you how teams get prepared. The way they get prepared is the exact same way USC beat Oklahoma in the national championship back in 2004. You want to know what happened? That defensive-minded coach, Pete Carroll, said, you know what we're not going to do? Let that freshman, Adrian Peterson, do anything to us. They have an injured quarterback. We're going to destroy Adrian Peterson. We're going to stack it up. He's not going to do anything. And we're going to go out there and beat the crap out of him. And what happened? They beat the crap out of us. And so that's what you run into with Riley. These defenses in the playoffs are prepared for what he's going to do. They're going to be ready for it. You guys are going to be elite this season. That's going to be your point. Now, the question is going to be can you get past the teams in your conference that are ready? Dan Lanning knows how to stop it. And he's brought in some good defensive weapons as well. That's where you all should have your fear. We can clown them all we want to and talk about Bo Picks all day long. That Oregon defense is going to be, just like you said, it's going to shock everybody again. Because, they've known for having defensive linemen. They known for having defensive linemen, and it's in Eugene. Boy, that's the only struggle I see you all having this year is that game. If you can handle that game, I think you'll be fine. But, boy, they're going to put Caleb Williams to work.
Utah as well, man. Don't forget about Whittingham and Utah and them. They're going to have something to say.
Is Utah in the season?
Yes, and it's in USC. It's at USC, so you can give them like the home field.
Yeah.
There are some games that are concerning on USC's schedule that I think are going to tell us a lot about what this defense looks like and if Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley have adapted and learned from what they did at Oklahoma, because obviously that at Oregon game, that's the one you want to circle. That's where College game day is going to be. But the Utah game at home, at Notre Dame is going to be a much better team this year. And you started to see it towards the tail end of last year. They really started to improve. So you've got to go to Notre Dame and play in a place that's going to be a pretty hostile and a pretty tough environment. Plus, it's October 14th. If it's at 6:30, it could be a little cooler. It could be a little cooler up there. And then I also circled that out Colorado game. I know a lot of people are going to laugh, but Colorado actually gave USC some problems in the first quarter last year. And I get it was only a first quarter, but this is going to be a much different, a much more physical, and a much more athletic Colorado team. And you're having to go to Boulder where you want to run your speed D. You tell me how that's going to work when you're in the mountains and you're going to have guys on oxygen on the sideline. It's going to happen. And I think that could be a game where if they really want to do this speed D, it's going to be curious to see how that works in that kind of environment. I think those are the games you got to circle and you got to look at for USC and go, those are the concerns. That's what I want to see. I want USC get past those games.
That's a good point real quick, Ty. Let me jump in real quick and I'll pass it right back to you. Is USC has a 6-game gauntlet that I'm curious to what it's going to look like. They go to Notre Dame in October. Utah comes to the house. Cal at home should be your basically quote-unquote bye-week game, so you should be able to get yourself retooled. Then Washington comes in, you travel to Eugene, and then you have the UCLA game. Do not sleep on Chip Kelly at the collegiate level. He proved it to us last year that he's pretty good, and all he's going to do is get better. And he's adding players that are fitting what he wants to do that can hopefully disrupt what you're doing on your side, on your team. So my point is that your schedule isn't as favorable as I want, as I may have said before, but you got some tough ones. But I still think that Caleb can carry you through it. The question is going to be is how worn down will he be once the season ends? Well, that's the only concern we've had is how much weight you put on a quarterback's shoulder in that Riley team, not even just offense, just team.
And you've got Willow down here laughing in the comments, but I do want to say this: Lincoln Riley and his quarterbacks, especially Caleb Williams, they've not done well in the too high safety look. And Colorado, they have 2 lockdown corners that have actually been playing pretty well throughout the spring and the summer. If they're able to throw out a too high safety look on Caleb Williams, could that tell us I think that could tell us everything we need to know that early in the season. If Caleb Williams struggles against Colorado, every other team that they go play throughout the season is going to have the formula on how to beat Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley.
So here's where I agree with y'all and where I don't know that it's going to be a close game when they play Colorado. I just don't think Colorado has the tools. But every other game y'all mentioned, I'm right here with y'all. Like, they are all going to be great games. Now, people in the comments are saying Colorado could clip some people this year. I do agree with that. Look, people are looking at Colorado as it's a zero-sum game, right? That it's all or nothing. That if Coach Prime goes out there and wins 4 or 5 games, that it's an objective failure. That, to me, is wild. If he wins 4 or 5 games, that's a success. Like, they won one game.
400%. 400% increase.
One game. Now, he's made some great moves in the transfer portal. I mean, they have gotten some guys that really do move the needle. He made some great moves in recruiting, got some guys that really do move the needle, but it is going to take time. I do think Trojan, I think y'all will just Caleb alone will just eviscerate them. But look, there's another conversation we've got to get to here, and we're already in the region. So let's go ahead and attend the funeral. The Pac-12 guys, which one of us wants to eulogize? Because it's done. It's done. Jay, you call it. PG, you put in the eulogy. What time is it? We got it. Where's the flatlining sound?
Right. It's 5:06 It's 5:06 Mountain Time, which is 6:06 in the Central Region. And we're going to have to, we're not going to call, you're going to go ahead and call it. All the announcements should be coming out the rest of the week. It looks like the ACC is working on the last 2 teams, while the Big 12 is also pulling 2 more in conversation. And we're just going to go ahead and say bye-bye to the PAC. So I think I need to give the eulogy, though. And I got to give it, PG. I want you to just pile on top of this because I know you got some things to add. And I also want to make a quick announcement for everybody that's watching or whatnot. Now that we have hit 10,000 on the channel, I'm going to bring back the namesake podcast, Unfair Sports. That will be launching this week. It'll be a weekly one on top of my Sooner content. It'll be more just college football focused. I'll have guests. We'll talk. It's going to be just us kicking it and talking ball. And I'm going to go in depth on this conference alignment, which you'll probably get first thing in the morning. Now, the death of the Pac-12 is here because the Pac-12 decided they wanted to be lazy. So here's a preview of basically my monologue I'm going to give, and I'm going to give it to you in about a minute. The Pac-10 had the opportunity to start this, but now everyone else decided to finish them. They could have been the ones to build up a massive conference. They had conversations with the likes of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M. They were going to steal all of these teams and bring them in. But guess what they decided to do? They said, no, we're too important for them. We don't want them on our coast. And now that they're not on their coast, nobody's going to be on their coast. Why? We're stealing everybody from the Pac. So congratulations, Pac-12. You get the Donkey of the Day award. You are the team that decided to put a hatchet in your own chest because you could have easily been the ones to dismantle college football realignment, but you weren't forward thinking enough. You were thinking about yourselves. You were selfish. That's what I got to say.
I think you said it perfectly. No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these teams. I believe ESPN was talking about it with Stanford and Cal earlier, and they were talking about how Stanford and Cal really need the Big Ten to let them into that conference because they kind of rely on football to let those programs run. And if they go to like a sub Power 5 conference and they're making sub Power 5 money, they might not be able to keep their football programs running. And there's been a lot of questions from players and recruits and families about what's going to happen. And I think that's probably the worst thing of all is there are now kids and families that are impacted by all of this realignment because you couldn't get your stuff done. You couldn't get your work done. And you couldn't take care of the big dogs. I'm seeing this in every conference, and you're seeing this with Florida State in the ACC too. People aren't taking care of their bigger brands, and they're letting their bigger brands walk, and therefore it's causing their conferences to break down. Luckily, the Big 12 hired a new commissioner, and they were able to at least piece something together, which in reality, I get the money part of it, but I think the Big 12 has done a good job in replacing Oklahoma and Texas. And
as good as they could.
Yeah. And I think in the long run, they'll be okay. Now, if they would have got Oregon and Washington, it would have been fantastic. I think in fact, that conference probably would have been better off than it was with OU and Texas because you would have replaced it with two similar brands and you would have gotten additional sub brands in there to help make the conference better and deeper. But when I look at the Pac-12 and I look at these teams that are there, I am sad because we are losing rivalries now. Like Oregon State's not going to be able to follow Oregon to the Big Ten and be able to continue that Oregon State-Oregon rivalry. I mean, we've seen that with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's not going to the SEC. And now all of a sudden and don't let them fool you, they don't want to play Oklahoma outside of the conference because, well, it's almost a guaranteed loss for them every year. Maybe every 10 years they'll get the win. So they don't want to play that game. So there are rivalries that we have grown up watching and loving. The rivalries that make college football great disappearing because everybody's got to go jump and get their money because these conferences aren't taking care of their brands.
Yeah, and look, one of the things you said that I do want to piggyback on, nobody's stopping Oklahoma State from going and playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma wants that game. Oklahoma State is not inclined to acquiesce to their request. So in some way, rivalries are being torn by the wayside, but at the same time, the game could happen. Now, PG, you make the point, right? Like you make the counter argument that people do need to understand. You're not going to be incentivized to schedule that game if, in the case of Oklahoma State, your rivalry is so lopsided that it's almost a guaranteed loss. Then you're getting an out-of-conference loss. God knows what's going to happen in your conference. So I think you make a great point about the scheduling. I do think that the expanded playoffs can help with that, though, right? Like, so me, who's been a proponent of not expanding them, now all of a sudden sees a little bit of a silver lining, because I'm like, hey, we can maintain some of these rivalries because now your margin for error is a little bit less, right? Like you have enough of a margin for error to where we can try and do this. But I do agree with you. At the end of the day, one thing we have to understand, and I said this in my video, we all have to realize that the people making these moves, they're not you or I. We're college football fans at heart. Everybody here on this panel, everybody here in the chat, we might be on camera talking right now. We're college football fans that you all have allowed to be put in this position to, that we can rant and rave and sit here and talk with all of you. But we're fans. That's what we do. We do this because we love college football. The people that are making these decisions, they might like college football, but they love the money college football can generate them. And that's what they're after, right? That's what this is all about. That's the sad reality of the situation. And you know what? Lane Kiffin had a hell of a tweet earlier. I don't know if y'all saw it, but he was talking about people. He said, don't dare excuse or get mad at these kids talking about NIL when look at what's happening in college football right now. You got teams jumping conferences for more money. And it's like, okay, well, if the teams are doing that, how are we going to expect the players not to be looking out for their best deal? Right now, it's a game of self-interest, right? And that's just the name of it right now. So the dust is not even close to settling. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. The dust is not settling. This is just getting started. The Pac-12 has some members remaining. There was some talk about them being able to possibly merge with the Mountain West. I don't think that saves them. And I asked this question on my video. What in this entire process leads me to believe that the leadership of the Pac-12 is now going to be inclined to take the deal that they have been so hesitant to take up to this point? What believes me to do that? Because right now, their negotiating power is gone. Absolutely out the door. I don't believe that they're going to take any deal, and I hope I'm wrong, but that leads me to believe that the PAC is dead. It's just we're watching the beginning of the end. Whether it lasts a year, 2 years, I don't know. But this is it. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. That's the merging with the Mountain West would, I mean, if anything, that would help Mountain West. That would give them a bump. And if anything, if they want to really, I mean, they can take the Mountain West TV deal and then add in Apple for streaming so that people can go ahead and, stream their favorite team. I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually like that streaming services are available for some teams and making it to where you can probably follow your own team as you go. That was the one thing I really liked about watching, having Oklahoma with ESPN Plus, is logging into ESPN Plus and watching games. I have that service.
Oh, no. Mountain J is gone.
Hotel Internet
J. Oh,
that's exactly what it is. But I actually enjoyed. I'm
sorry. I just have to point this out. This man came back in here from the dead like Undertaker, just zoop in the coffin, not missing a beat. Didn't miss a beat. Continue. I'm sorry. That was great.
And so I like that the streaming services give you that ability to watch your favorite team, when you don't have the ability to, when you there's a chance that you're going to miss their games. Having them on there, to me, makes it a lot more convenient for true fans. But the problem is when you look at certain teams like Cal and Stanford, they don't really care about football. Cal and Stanford both caught lightning in the bottle with their coaches of Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw at Stanford and then Tedford over there at Cal. But they're historically they haven't been that great over the last 20 years. It's just moments, and which is nice, but as PG mentioned, that was the one thing that does bother me about conference alignment, is the lack of regional rivalries that we're going to miss. The good thing is that the biggest rivalries will stay on their stages, but we will lose the Egg Bowl most likely. We're probably going to lose the territorial cup that you get out of Arizona and Arizona State. There's a few different ones you're going to lose because of it, but yeah, I'm saddened. But yeah, you had Texas in the Big Eight, and And then you had Oklahoma, I was in the Southwest while Oklahoma was in the Big Eight, but they still kept the rivalry going. So certain teams are going to keep the most important rivalries going, but we're going to lose all the regional ones where you can really talk smack in state. That's the allure of Bedlam, even though that it is so lopsided. It's the fact that, we work next, people in Oklahoma work next to a Oklahoma State fan. That's what makes Auburn and Alabama so great too, on top of everything, is that they're all in state. So you might be at the shop getting your car fixed, and the guy sees your sticker and says, you're a Bama fan, huh? It's like, oh, you're working on my car as an Auburn fan? We need to stop this. It makes it a little bit more fun with the banter, but you don't get that with a lot of these others, and you're going to lose it with those regional rivalries going away.
Very true, Jay. Unfortunately, you might have to hop back in. You're having some audio feedback on your end, but hop back in here because I have a point I want to get your take on about what you were just saying. It's interesting what he was saying about some of these games just meaning more. It's why I've always said, and I completely concede Oklahoma fans that say Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, not a rivalry. Because by most metrics, it's not. But personally, and I've always laid this out there when I've said this, I've always framed it from my point of view. That way you can understand. The reason why I've always looked forward to that game is because there's something more on the line than just a game, right? Like, it's bragging rights in your state. Jay, you're talking about the regional setup and everything. It's a big reason why Auburn and Georgia are such historic rivals, right? Like, it's across the river. You know what I mean? Like, it's right there. So it's the regionality of college football has been a big deal, but at the same time, it went by the wayside a while ago, right? Like, it started to crumble a while ago. So I can't blame what's happening right now on that when West Virginia has been, traveling half this country to do whatever it is they want to do. So that's going to be something super, super interesting. Hitting some comments. Mark, you said you haven't been in here for a while. Glad you're tuning in from Guam, my guy.
Ooh.
Out there in the islands. Like the new setup. Thank you. Said, heck, Florida, Georgia. Yep. Of the new recruits OU landed, which two intrigued you the most? Jay, yeah, perfect. That's a great question. Jay, I'll start with you.
The most recent ones, honestly, it's going to be this week. We had this past week, we had 4 commits, 3 scholarship, 1 a preferred walk-on. And I'm going to be honest, I think it's going to be Isosa. I think that Josh Isosa is probably the most intriguing one of them. He's started playing football his sophomore year. He's a wrestler. So he's got that true raw talent. And because of the type of coach we've got with Bill Beatonbow, who's really good at taking that raw talent and making something out of it, look at Tyler Guyton. He's going to be fun to watch over the next couple of years and seeing what Beatonbow does to mold him as an offensive lineman. That's probably the one that jumped out the most to me. PG, I know you've got something.
I think it's Bergen Kaisar. And you guys have heard me talk about this kid for a while now, for at least a couple months since this recruiting cycle started. But Bergen Kaisar is a guy that holds the state championship in the deadlift at 635 pounds. Dude benches 320, squats 510. The dude is just an animal in the weight room. And a 3-star kid. You got him as a PWO, which, by the way, Oklahoma, this is now, I think, their second 3-star that they've gotten as a preferred walk-on. Normally, you see guys that just aren't ranked in the composite, not getting a lot of looks from another team. But Bergen Kaisar is a guy that Oklahoma State wanted him. Tulsa wanted him. So I think Bergen Kaisar under Todd Bates, if he holds out for 2 years with Bates, I think could actually play his junior and senior year and actually be a key part of this defense, because the dude's already got a lot of potential in how strong he is.
Yeah, look, Oklahoma went on a run. And before we dive deep into recruiting, because that's our next topic, I do want to quickly send off, right? Like, both of you, beautiful words on the Pac-12. Now allow me to be the one that kicks the boat into the ocean and sail it into its watery grave. There's action and then there's inaction. And whenever we talk about this in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, that's irrelevant. We are going to think back to this point right here. What did the Big 12 do as compared to what the Pac-12 didn't do? One of them sat on their hands. The other one made moves. Now, did the Big 12 replicate Texas and Oklahoma? No, but how are you going to replicate Texas and Oklahoma? Those are two top 10 brands in college football. Those type of brands don't exactly move every day. But they did something that intrigued fans. They got Cincinnati, who'd been to a college football playoff. UCF, who's crowned themselves national championships. How many teams have done that and gotten the media attention they did doing? So at the very least, they're intriguing. You get Houston, and then you get BYU, and now you add the 4 corner schools. Like, the Big 12 went with action. The Pac-12 thought everything would come to them, from their contract that they thought would come to them to the entire problem being solved. And for me, that's the name of the game here. Like, we have to acknowledge that there's greed in this and that money is what is fueling this. But at the same time, there was a path forward. They didn't take it. Consistently, they didn't take it. And inaction is the word for the Pac-12 when all this is said and done. That, I think, is the story for me here. But let's talk about some recruiting because, guys, what a week. You talk about Oklahoma. Y'all had 4 commitments. Can we stop for a second and talk about what the hell happened with Florida State in the month of July? They caught fire. Unlike anything I've seen in a long time, a dozen commitments, sitting at 22 guys now, number 4 in the nation, getting Charles Lester and KJ Bolden, and they're about to flip another cat who's a commit to Georgia, who's a quasi 5-star in the 2025 class. Oh yeah, by the way, Georgia fans in here, sorry to say this, he goes to Buford, an area where Georgia, for whatever reason, is having kids leave the state. Now, it's not affecting their ability to win national championships, but at the same time, not ideal. Jay, you kind of led this off by saying Florida State was a team you thought was too low in the coaches poll. What about what they're doing on the trail, and how impressive is it?
Mike Norvell is out there with wizardry, and I'm going to hit up one of my Florida State content creators I know, and I'm going to get him on the show. We're going to talk about this because my goodness, KJ Bolden and Charles. I mean, you pull both of those out, well, 5-star plus and a consensus 5-star on the defensive side of the ball, and they are just cooking with peanut oil right now. They are making the magic happen. Everything that they're touching is turning into gold. And I am just impressed at the fact that they're keeping the consistency going and landing these big time players. Now the question is going to be is, can they win games with it? And I think so. Norvell was the one that I was like, okay, they're going to try to find a way. If Coach Prime does good at Colorado, they're going to try to find a way to run this man out. They'd be idiots to lose him. They'd be idiots to try to push him out the door because he is on it. Every player that they're getting their hands on is a potential game changer for them down the line, and someone that's going to walk in and probably compete for a spot as a freshman, kind of like Caleb Downs did at Alabama. KJ Bolden's going to probably walk in and play next season. He's probably going to be starting at safety not even on accident, just because he's that darn talented. Charles Lester, he'll work his way into the rotation, but as we mentioned, they brought in some good players on the transfer portal, but I'm just impressed that they're able to go out there and just keep winning like this. It's amazing at the run that they're on right now. The number 4 roughly class in the nation, just jumping teams each month, just moving all the way up. I think they finished with a top 5 class, and that's going to be probably one of their best classes they've had since the Jimbo Fisher era even started, which is crazy to think.
Yeah, and the only question for me in terms of top 5 is who they land, but it's because they already have 22 guys. Like, how big of a class are they going to take? How much room do they have? But my goodness.
Well, with that, remember, since this is the last year that you can truly stack up on kids, they'll probably try to push for closer to 30 if they can. Because next year, we don't know what the class sizes are going to be. Will they go back to 25? Will they make it a 1-for-1 with transfer kids? We don't know what that scholarship number is going to be, but this is the year everybody's going to be jumping on it.
No, I love that. And you want to know what's crazier? KJ Bolden wasn't the first win over Georgia they got. They got a 5-star in that class that has been there since before Charles Lester got there. That's been there since before KJ Bolden got there, that was committed to Georgia. Landon Thomas, the 5-star tight end, and they flipped him. Now, Eric, you make a comment here that's very true. in terms of the spirit and the theory behind the comment, which is the comment says Florida State is spending the money. NIL is rampant right now, no doubt, but Bama and Georgia are going to flip some guys. The spirit of this comment is, hey, we're in August. Penn hasn't hit paper yet. Teams are going to still recruit these guys. And you're not wrong, right? You're certainly not wrong. But God, I think that they're going to stay after them. Flips happen, no doubt about it. If they beat LSU, Eric, you're reading my mind right here. If they beat LSU, it's going to be a really interesting conversation. That's great. Reading my mind. Yep. JW Crunch comments the money. But this is the thing, JW, like, even though I don't disagree with you, everybody's doing it right now. So it's just
Thank you.
I'm not like, you're right. You are right. And it is there are some collectives that are better than others. There are some schools that have the ability to mobilize more money than others. But at the end of the day, it's happening, right? It's happening all over. So
real quick on that, Ty, and I'm glad you made that point, is do not get into the false thought that if your team loses the players because NIL was it, and if your team wins the players because of coaching and development. That's a lie. Every single school, every single top school is spending money. I promise you. The Sooners and my Vols are both winning players because they're spending money too. It's a combination. Like in some cases, you do have a development piece, you have a coaching piece that comes into play, especially with your legendary coaches. But with these higher profile ones, believe me, it's money with every team.
Yeah, some teams are spending much more than others, JW, and that's 100% true. Some teams are quoting astronomical numbers, and then you have other teams saying, this is our cap, and that's what it is. So there is a part of that, but everybody's doing it right now. I'd be very interested to see really what's going on behind the scenes in NIL. One day we're going to get a 30 for 30, and I want everybody that's in this live right now to show up right here, and we're going to all watch it together.
Yes.
We're going to roast some marshmallows. It's going to be a grand time. One question we got right here, and speaking of recruiting, guys, Dominic McKinley, no date as far as I know, but I know that he said in a post that he wants to commit before the season. That's going to be an interesting one. Oklahoma, LSU thought to be in the battle. Texas coming out of nowhere, receiving predictions in their favor. Colin Simmons, another one we've got to watch. Texas in a good position there as well with LSU. Recruiting is heating up, right? There's no doubt about it. And it's just so many areas we could go. Now, Eric made a comment earlier that I kind of wanted to extrapolate a little bit from, because we're talking about recruiting. And as we continue talking about which battles are moving us right now, the battles that we think are very important, I want each of you to be thinking, who is this year's Notre Dame? And what I mean when I ask who is this year's Notre Dame, last year Notre Dame got off to an insane start in their recruiting class. Absolutely wild. A recruiting class that featured at one time Dylan Edwards, Peyton Bowen, and Keon Keeley. Well, Dylan Edwards is with Colorado, Peyton Bowen is with Oklahoma, and Keon Keeley is with Alabama, all of which are players that move the needles. Now, yes, every team in the nation experiences flips. This is recruiting. We know what this is. Which team is going to have the exodus of players that when you look back, you're going to say they had all of those guys committed? That's a question I'm very much interested in. Jay, you and I have talked about it a bit, but Eric making this comment makes me think of that. Y'all think about it. PG, Jay, y'all think about it. And as we're winding down, that's what we'll finish on. But PG, talk to us about recruiting, man. Which battles are you interested in? What are you hearing about Dominic McKinley? Where do you think that's going? Kind of your gut feeling there. And then what do OU fans need to be excited about?
Well, there's one recruitment that I'm really watching really closely, and one that intrigues me that's actually not for Oklahoma, and it actually goes back to FSU, which, by the way, nobody mentioned it, and I'm really sad. FSU fans, just like Oklahoma fans, have David Hicks PTSD and Luther Burden PTSD. FSU fans got this thing called Deion Sanders PTSD. And so they got KJ Bolden and Charles Lester, and they somehow still have to hold on to those guys from Deion Sanders. So I just have to throw that out there because it's going to be funny if those guys.
Fair point. Real quick, for those that aren't initiated, Travis Hunter, as well as McCormick McClain, because McCormick McClain was at one point looking at Florida State, picked Miami, and then he ended up. Yeah, you're right. That's 2 years in a row. Yeah. So that's a good point.
But no, I mean, Jeremiah Smith, the number one wide receiver in this class, the number one player. It really seems like Florida State and Florida are picking up a lot of traction with that kid. And mind you, what are the two things that those schools have? Quarterbacks of the future. DJ Lagway, and Florida State has a quarterback in Luke Kromenheck. I think that's how you say his name. That a lot of people are not.
I'm not even going to attempt it.
A borderline could be top or a top 5 quarterback, a 5-star quarterback by the end of this cycle. Florida State and the Gators, I think, are in a battle right now to potentially flip Jeremiah Smith, and that is a recruitment that I think everybody needs to be paying attention to, because he has been committed to Ohio State and has kind of been on Ohio State for so long that I think a lot of people are just kind of forgetting about him. You know, they're just like, oh, they see the Jeremiah Smith news, but if you really are starting to read between the lines, Jeremiah Smith, for him to be committed, he sure is visiting these schools a lot. He sure is going around and he's drawing up a lot of attention. He's talking to the Chad Simmons and the Steve Wiltfongs about these visits and really talking up these schools. So that's one that I watch and go, if you're Florida State and you land Jeremiah Smith with what you've already done on the defensive side of the ball and what you've got on the offense side with the quarterback and the tight end, hey, Florida State, you might need to watch out, because here in a couple of years, they could be a national power once again. But when you look at Oklahoma, because that's what we're really here to talk about on the recruiting trail, I'm excited for what they're doing, because in 2024, we've talked about the potential that OU can land 3 5-star defensive linemen. And several months ago, y'all would have called me crazy. I've seen people in the chat call me crazy. But how crazy is it now? Because Williams Nwaneri, all indications, everybody says that guy's going to be a Sooner, because you've got Kamori Moore here. You've got Caden Green here. His buddy Isaiah Mosey appears to be coming to Oklahoma. That's what we all believe. Like, is he really going to say no to coming and playing with those teammates? David Stone, a guy that's been to Oklahoma so many times, and a guy that, you know, he's from here. A guy that we've all believed and said, that's the most important guy in this class. Guy that I've told you is more important than Williams Nwaneri, the number one player that a lot of people say is in this class. And then you've got Dominic McKinley, who just kind of came out of left field. I mean, in reality, it wasn't up till the past couple of months that everybody was nationally talking about Dominic McKinley in Oklahoma. And for so long, we told you LSU is not the threat that everybody says they are, because, well, LSU just doesn't have the relationship. And then, you know, in an unfortunate series of events, they're losing their defensive line coach. That's never a win for anybody in that kind of situation. But it just shows you that LSU, they had a lot of ground to make up. And I don't think Brian Kelly is going to be able to do it. I don't think this is going to be one that he wins. Colin Simmons, though, completely different story. I think Colin Simmons ends up at LSU. I think Brian Kelly has that relationship on lock. I think it's one that he's been working on for a while. And I think the reason why they're so far behind in the Dominic McKinley recruitment is because they put so much time and effort into Colin Simmons. Think about it. Colin Simmons has been there a lot. And when you talk to all of the LSU folks, Colin Simmons has been their guy up until recently, where they've started to say, hey, well, let's get Dominic McKinley too, because he's in state, because everybody else is talking about him, because Dominic McKinley rose to 5-star status. So I look at it and go, OU Texas for a 5-star defensive lineman. I love it. These are the recruiting battles that I'm here for, and I still have Oklahoma leading for this one. I know some people say Texas. I like Oklahoma for it right now. I think Oklahoma has the best pitch with the sole mission and everything else that they have with their coaches and how they relate to the family and Dominic McKinley himself. I think Oklahoma is the best positioned team to win the McKinley recruitment. But we talk about 2024 for Oklahoma so much, and I'm looking at 2025 right now, because this 2024 class, it's going to come to a halt here pretty quickly. I think in August, you're going to have the majority of your class committed, and Oklahoma's going to be sitting back, and they're going to be sitting pretty. But by the end of the 2024 cycle, Oklahoma, Jay, I think we were texting about it the other day. I think I said, 6 or 7? You were saying 10. Could we say 12 commits? And I know that sounds crazy, but I know of guys that are pretty much committed at this point, and they're trying to figure out how in the world they're going to make it public. And Oklahoma's class, they're having the start that the Georgias and the Alabamas have.
Well, I will say this. Bama starts slow. Bama usually starts very slow. Like Bama a few years ago was 55th in the nation in June and then went to number 1. Like they they do weird things. That they'll get a few, like 2025 for Bama is a little bit unique because of Jamie French and Ryan Williams, right? They're starting very fast in that class, but that doesn't detract from your point about Oklahoma, because I haven't been tuned in. Y'all know, getting married, redoing the studio, on the honeymoon. The month of July was a blur. So now I'm finally back into the swing of things. I've heard about y'all just moving mountains in the 2025 class. So that's going to be something we've got to watch. And, one of the things Eric said earlier, speaking of Bama recruiting right now, and then I'm going to pass it back to you very quickly, PG. Eric, you make a great point. Bama is sitting in fine position, right? Perry Thompson flips. That's not ideal. In a perfect world, you keep your 5-star receiver. In a perfect world, your 5-star receiver doesn't flip to your in-state rival. That's just unfortunate. Is it the end of the world? No. A 5-star isn't going to make or break Alabama, but it is unfortunate. We can all agree on that point. Love the cat they just got. Jay, Tennessee's your other team. I think you probably know a bit more about Amari Jefferson than some of the random college football fans, just because I think he's a little underrated. Some services have him as a 3-star, and I just don't see in what universe he's a 3-star. Love that addition. But Bama's looking to flip some Georgia guys as well. So Bama's on the prowl. Love where they sit. Great foundation. We talk about recruiting as like building a house. What's your foundation like? And PG, this goes to what you're saying. If Oklahoma jumps out really quickly in 2025, we know Brent Venables' visits policies. His foundation is going to be superb in the class of 2025. You love having a great foundation. So back to you, PG. I'm sorry. I just wanted to get that quick little caveat in there as I had time.
No, and I don't know if Jay agrees with this, but for the 2025 class for Oklahoma, which it's weird that the 2024 class is going to be so historic for Oklahoma. And I say that because I'm just so confident in where that class is heading. That we're talking about the 2025 class in a manner of like it's going to trump the 2024 class. It's really what it feels like. And the reason why I say that is look at all of the OK Preps guys in this class that are going to be top 100, top 150, top 200 kids. You've already got Elijah Thomas, 4-star wide receiver. You've got 4-star wide receiver Jaden Nickens that is coming down to his commitment on July 12th. And I mean, it seems like committing August 12th. Why is he committing this early if he's not committing to Oklahoma? And then you've got all the Carl Albert guys that are going to be playing with quarterback Kevin Sperry. So it's like, it seems like the 2025 class, because of all of the OK Preps kids, which, by the way, on the defensive line they're going to have a 5-star edge rusher, and then there's another potential highly rated 4-star guy that could come in later down the road. I look at it and go, Oklahoma's 2025 class could be what we talked about in 2024. Honestly, maybe we were looking at the wrong year. Maybe we were talking about 2025 and we just didn't realize it.
That's a good point, PG. And honestly, this leads right into the question that you asked, Ty, for us to think about is who's going to be our Notre Dame for this year that's going to start really shedding off players. And honestly, based upon the type of recruits that are out there today, that's probably going to end up being Michigan. Now, they may not have a lot of 5-stars on their roster, but they've got some quality 4-stars. And they've still got players that people are going to go into. Like, I was looking at Clemson as well as a team that if they don't live up to the expectations this season, they could potentially have people going after their players. But the good thing for Clemson is similar to Oklahoma, their policy of no visits after you have committed makes it really tough for teams to really get in the door because these kids probably won't go make a visit. Now, if you get a Clemson kid to go make a visit, they're gone. Similar to with Oklahoma. If you get an Oklahoma kid to make a visit somewhere, they're gone. And right now, both teams are poised to go in and have themselves a 10-win season. And because of that, there's a potential that 10-win season is enough for them to hang on to the players that they really want. But the way that Michigan loaded up so early, just like Notre Dame did before, I feel like they're the team to watch out for. Georgia also. If Georgia doesn't go out there and keep that machine rolling, if their defense starts to show a little bit of a crack in the armor or whatnot, and people start really going after them, and they go in there and they lose 2 games this season. I mean, what does that look like in the recruiting trail? Do they feel like the dynasty's over at that point? And if the quarterback doesn't perform where they want, does everyone start to talk down on Georgia, which would be the stupidest thing out there? But at the same time, it's college football, baby. That's what we do. we just talk down on teams even if they win 10 games. Look at Alabama. A bad season is 11-2. Like that tells you everything you need to know about winners out there in college football. And so because of that, I'm looking at Georgia and Michigan right now because they jumped out so early. And like you said, Ty, Alabama goes slow. Oklahoma similarly. Florida State's typically traditionally slow too. They usually don't get their pickups into July and into August. This big quiet period in August is huge for a lot of your big programs because that final visit in July, right before the high school season starts, that's when the closers usually walk in the door and say, hey, lock yourself up. Don't focus on recruiting while you're playing high school football. You focus on being your best and having your most impactful season so you can make your star rating looks better. We don't care about your star rating because we know you're a talent, but go do that for yourself. And so that's a good closing tactic right there in getting a lot of these kids to go ahead and shut things down by September 1st. And so that's the expectation of why you'll see an Alabama class go from 15 to 25 right there in the month of August, similar to even Oklahoma. You'll see a big jump for those players because once they're done, they're done. Now, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, Florida, they don't have that policy in place of no visits afterwards. They don't mind you recruiting their players. That does. I mean, for the most part, their confidence is nice, but at the same time, you don't want people to go in there and try to figure out what your number is and then try to go undercut you, especially nowadays in NIL. And so because of that, I'm thinking that there's probably going to be between Georgia and Michigan. You're going to start to see some potential flips. I don't think that Georgia really loses anybody that they wanted to keep, but I can see Michigan have some struggles because we got to see what they look like in those 4 games without Harbaugh and the 1 game without Sharon Moore. So that's going to be an intriguing look.
That suspension brutal and wild.
Luckily,
as well.
They're not playing anybody, but Sharon Moore not calling the plays either. That's the only time I got concerned about what if the machine's going to keep running properly.
Now, I'll say this, 2025, Georgia actually could lose a offensive tackle to the University of Oklahoma. I don't have him favored to end up in the class right now, but if he ends up on campus a couple times, this is one you got to watch. And it's, I believe his name's Michael DeBose out of Mobile, Alabama. So obviously a guy you got to watch out for with Bama as well, but that could be a guy that he was recently offered by Bill Bedenbaugh that I'd be paying attention to. That could be a Georgia flip, and that's a guy Georgia wants to keep. They've had him for a while. I believe he's a 5-star offensive tackle.
Well, Bama's also after Peyton Woodward.
Yeah.
They want him in a bad way. And look, I agree completely, Jay, about Michigan. They're a team I'm going to be watching closely because they have 27 commitments. Right? Like football hasn't even started yet, and you're sitting with 27 commitments. Now, this is a double-edged sword, right? Because your class is pretty much well done if you're Michigan. So if you're the Wolverines, you're sitting here looking at it, and you love where you're currently sitting, but you know this isn't going to be where you sit in a month, 2 months, 3 months, because let's be honest here, guys. Michigan has 27 commits. Tennessee, sitting at 8, has 19 commits and a higher average recruit rating. Alabama has 15 commits. They have a much higher average recruit rating. LSU, 22 commits, but Clemson, sitting at number 11, they have 17 commits. If Bama hits 25 commits, they're vaulting, right? A lot of these teams that already have their classes somewhat full, which is why I always say, kind of a double-edged sword filling up your class super quick. You don't have to worry about recruiting as much going into the season, but you know that you're going to get jumped because teams are going to continue adding in. That's why I really kind of like where LSU sits. I think they have about 19, right? Sitting around 19, 20 prospects going into the football season seems like such a sweet spot right now where you can hone in on a few battles you like, try and flip some guys and be riding off into the sunset. 15 to 20, but as well, you have that nice foundation. Anything less than that, I don't think you worry. But you do know, like, okay, time to put our big boy pants on and really start hitting the trail. Now, we do have a question here that I want to hit to. Camelo asked, why was the Army All-American game and Under Armour game not been as popular as it once was in terms of making commitments? I think it's because of early signing day now. right? Like I think that
And
now there's a
NIL.
dedicated day and NIL. I think you're 100% right there. But
I don't know about NIL, but I think you're right on that, Ty, on the early signing day, because a lot of these kids are becoming early enrollees. Like majority of I'll put it like this, as an Oklahoma fan and my understanding of the way Oklahoma likes to work, they want majority of their class to enroll in January. They want all of them to get the early head start if they possibly can. Unless they're a two-sport athlete, they're going to enroll in January. And that has been one thing that has hindered a lot of the All-American games and stuff, is because of that.
That's a good point. I personally, I think the primary issue is you just have an entire day now. Like Jay said, it's just dedicated to that one thing. Now it's also dedicated to absurdities like the Miami coaching staff showing up at a high school to watch Kermani McLean sign with them, and Kermani McLean not to be at said high school or in said state. What a beautiful time to be alive. That is recruiting, ladies and gentlemen, and that's exactly why we love it. But I think for me, it's got to be Michigan, the team that I'm looking at. And I still think they're going to finish with a good recruiting class, but you have 27 commits. I've seen this story before, and it's nothing personal. It just seems to be the way the cookie crumbles so many times. Now, unless they go out there and start winning, they get to the playoffs, we're going to have a different story, and they very well might. So this is going to be super interesting. As we're winding down, let's look at some of this right here in the comments. Talking about DeBose with Alabama. Yeah, Alabama, Oklahoma, both going to push, but I know Alabama pushing very hard. Mark saying, Sadir, Mitchell, McKinley, January, Robinson, Simmons, Hill is a UT defense that I'd like to see. Mark, Jay and I sat down before I went on my honeymoon, and we were talking about Anthony Hill. I can't think of too many more freshmen in college football outside of like a Caleb Downs. Super psyched to see Caleb Downs play football. I can't think of too many more freshmen I'm more excited to see than an Anthony Hill. That guy right there is unbelievably talented. Can't wait to see what the future holds for him.
Almost was an OU guy. Almost was OU.
Here's one. I'll leave this to PG for you to start, Jay for you to finish it up. Odds of OU landing all three: Winery, Stone, McKinley.
I think it's hard to put a percentage on this. I think if you land Stone and Winery, I think you have about a 70% chance to get McKinley, because I think they are going to push hard to get McKinley here. But I do think you have a better shot at landing all three than one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as PG on that. I think that you are more likely to land all three than just landing only one. So if you go to ratio, so I can't put percentages on it either. But right now, Oklahoma's in a great position with Williams Winery. We know this. He has the best. He said it himself. Of all the relationships he's got, that's the best relationship for him. And he's even said it in multiple quotes. Relationships are important. So you got a great relationship with the defensive staff, who has been proven to do some things. They proved it at Clemson. Now bringing in their guys. They're going to start proving it again with the players that are coming in. Stone only makes sense because he's an Oklahoma kid. Now, I'll put it to you like this. I'm more confident in Winery than I am in Stone. So that should tell you how I feel about the entire scenario. But I do believe that Stone is one that he has his best relationship is Oklahoma as well. He talks about that quite often, but at the same time, there is an itching to me, I think, of playing somewhere else and just not coming back to Oklahoma and trying something new. There's nothing wrong with that. That's something I will anticipate, that heat being turned up close to 26. You're going to start hearing more about Florida. You're going to start hearing more about Miami, because he's in the state of Florida. They're going to be turning up the heat to say, hey, why don't you just stay here? Your mom likes visiting out here. You may as well show her, hey, why don't you come move out here to Florida, because it's Florida. You got all these beaches. We want you to come out here and do that. So expect that to be crazy. And then with McKinley, PG will tell you, McKinley don't talk. That dude quiet. Like he doesn't want to do interviews. He doesn't really want to have much conversation. Very nice kid, super humble, down to earth. I mean, you got to go dig stuff out of everybody around him if you want to get anything out of him. And right now, but I do think, and I'm gonna be honest, I think Texas leads for McKinley right now, just like all the analysts are saying. And the only reason why I say that is they got his mom on record talking about wanting the commitment date to be around September 1st, their first game of the season. Now, McKinley mentioned he wants it done before the season starts. His mom said our goal is to get it September 1st. But she did say this, though, in the article that a lot of people are disregarding. She's letting Dominic make the choice. She's letting him make his decision. And so if they have to push, if he feels a conviction in him that he doesn't really know where he wants to go, it's going to go to early signing day. But she wants him to not have to worry about during the season. Neither does he. But right now, I give it to you. Texas is really turning up the heat on them. They're doing a very good job of it. But don't sleep on Oklahoma. They've got one thing that was appealing to them that I've heard from a lot of parents. Talked to a couple of parents about it. That soul mission has sold a lot of kids at other schools where they're like, hey, I'm still considering Oklahoma. I'm going here. I may even talk. If things in my mind change down the line, I may do a flip. So keep your eyes out for that portion as a selling point. They love it. The parents love it. And it's doing really good things for the players. Don't be shocked if you see things like that with other schools because they're recognizing that parents are really concerned about what it looks like after football. So McKinley is up in the air for me, but I do think that Oklahoma has a really good chance of landing all three.
That's going to go ahead, PG.
Everybody's, I think we're so focused on the 3 5-stars. Everybody's kind of forgetting about the other defensive lineman that Oklahoma's in for. Nigel Smith.
Yeah.
Zena Yumio Azulu. Another Texas Oklahoma battle. Hey, Danny Okoye, who, after talking to him, listen, guys, I've been a guy that's telling you, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm starting to drink the Sprite.
Yeah, he's drinking the Kool-Aid, baby.
You drinking the Sprite that Okoye is going to OU?
I'm starting to drink it. I'm not gonna lie. I've laid in bed a couple nights and I've thought about it. Thinking, hey, what do I need to make for content? And I'm like, do I really want to make a Danny Okoye video? Because this is starting to become interesting.
Yeah, Bama's starting to turn up the heat on him as well. They had him out there for a camp and loved what he had.
I think it's Bama, Texas, Tennessee, and Oklahoma.
Honestly, I think it's Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Bama. I think Texas is a consideration down the line. I don't think that he actually has them as high as that Texas would like them to have him.
Now, here's something I do want to hit real quick.
Yeah.
Frightening Truth says, and Cook talking about guys that have been showing out at Texas's practice. And Jay, I want you to back me up here because I said this on SEC Connect.
When we first started.
Maybe the first one. They said, which freshman are you looking forward to? And I was like, I've talked about Anthony Hill. Jonte Cook could make as much noise as anybody in that Texas offense because I've watched him. He is good, really good, and you're hearing a lot of good things about him. No, do I think he's going to be wide receiver 1 for them this year? No, that's not my point. But I do think he's going to be a big piece of that offense. I think he will allow them to do more. He is very, very talented. Very excited to see him. Very excited to see him. Cole says DeSoto has a lot of players go D1. Yes, they do, Cole. Yes, they do. PG, very sorry. Continue.
Oh, no. I was just going to somebody had said in here about Bo Davis. Texas fans, I'd be a little cautious about Bo Davis. Heard some things that he might not be the recruiter y'all think he is.
I'll say this. If there's anything that you also listen to, PG ain't blowing smoke at you. And the reason why PG ain't blowing smoke at you is PG actually talks to the players. So if you go look at his channel, the PG show on YouTube, you'll see interviews with actual recruits. And once you get to know them and you build a little bit of rapport, they tell you a lot of stuff. I've had a couple spill a lot more details about NIL than I ever thought I was going to get. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. But I'm not going to – it's not something for them or me to disclose. But those conversations that PG's having with them, they're telling them about these coaches and what it's like talking to them and being with them. And most of it is behind the green room because they don't want – a lot of these kids don't want this information to get out. He's talked to so many on record on his channel, and he's talked to a lot of them that he hasn't even got a chance to get videos up with. So keep in mind, when he's telling you some stuff, me and him vet through a lot of it and have conversations. He's not BSing you. It's some real stuff to really keep in mind in those conversations. Not saying that it's gold, but saying that it's definitely something to consider in all conversations. But yeah, that the defensive line that Oklahoma is going after is going to be massive. And talking about Cooks, Jonte Cooks, Cooks is going to be that next Xavier Worthy. He's going to be a monster on the offensive side, and he's got Sarkisian who can draw up some absurd plays on the passing game that will make him be a threat in the open field. The only thing you've got to do is make sure those quarterbacks get him the ball and let him do his work. And I can see it. Texas fans, y'all better be excited this year. You have a reason. Just don't say you're back because you cursed yourself at that point, and then you're cooked.
Yeah, no, look, nobody's back until they're back, right? We got to see it on the field. There's no doubt about that. That's just the nature of the beast at this point. Here's one thing I will say. I think Bo Davis, it's just he self-selects. You get what I mean when I say this? It always likens the situation to whenever Nick Saban recruited Jonathan Allen. Right. And he was like, you're either with us or you're against us. I'm going to win with you or I'm going to win without you, whatever you want to do. And I don't know if y'all remember, but Kayvon Thibodeau was talking whenever he was after he got drafted. He was talking about they were breaking down some clips from the national championship game. And I think he was there. And he was talking about Nick Saban telling him, well, you're not going to play when you think you're ready to play. You're going to play when I tell you you're ready to play. And Kayvon Thibodeau was like, nah, that's not for me. And that's fair. Like, if that's not what you're after, it is perfectly reasonable and best for every party involved that Kayvon Thibodeau then go find an environment that's going to be best for him. That's the smart decision. But I also think Bo Davis operates under that same assumption, right? Where it's just like, look, this is what it is. No punches, held. This is the situation. You either vibe with that type of coach or you don't, right? Like, I just think that he's kind of, I think future or frightening, you're putting it best whenever the video that happened on the bus for Texas, that's the perfect summary of Bo Davis, right? I don't know if y'all remember, PG, you remember that one? Where they lost the game or Bo Davis, they got on that bus and Bo Davis ripped them a new one.
Well, and it's not that Bo Davis isn't a great dude and he's not a good recruiter. From a recruit's perspective, you either like him or you don't. And I know it's kind of hard for Texas fans to hear that, but it's just the truth.
Well, I think they know that.
Hey, Texas fans, listen to it this way. It's the exact same thing with Bill Bedenbaugh. It is the exact same thing. It's a personality thing. It's one of those, you either love them or you don't. And that's why with Oklahoma recruiting, it's a lot. We hit and miss on a lot of the 5 stars, but we still send guys in the first round of the NFL draft. He's a big developer guy, but he's also not the most personable when it comes to that. You love him or you don't.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of coaches in college football that are like that, right? I think there's a lot more guys that are like that. And I think that they're the type of guys that when they get the dudes, the development they can put forward is crazy, right? Like you notice we haven't said one thing about what Bo Davis does when he gets the players because that's understood. We know what happens when Bo Davis gets them. It's understood. And he doesn't even have a problem getting them. He's going to get his guys. He's going to develop them. Well, no, I don't think that we're saying, Ren, nobody's saying he can't recruit. We're just saying he's one of those guys where you're either like down with him or he's not your cup of tea. There's a lot of coaches like that. I would say Nick Saban is like that. And Nick Saban will straight up tell you to your face, that's how he is. Like the Jonathan Allen example, you either are going to join us and we're going to win with you, or you're not, and we're going to win without you. It's up to you. Either way, I'm winning.
And the difference between Bo Davis and Nick Saban is Nick Saban's got championships to back his.
Hey, Bo Davis has got some hardware as well.
I mean, it's fair. He does.
Yeah, Bo Davis has got some hardware as well, man. He is a dude. He's a hell of a coach, man. I got a lot of respect for Bo Davis. Also, he was a coach at Alabama. So I'm going to have love for Bo Davis. There's no doubt about that. Guys, this is a great place to wind it down. Well, I think he just said, I don't know that you literally said he's not a great recruiter. It's just that he's not the recruiter some people think he is, meaning that he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, go ahead and rewind that, because that's what he said, is that he's not what you think he is. That doesn't mean he's not a great recruiter, or that doesn't make him a bad recruiter. It's more of it's something a little different. He's a little different, but he's good at his job, but he's different. And it's Bill
Bedenbaugh with Oklahoma.
I was saying, like I put it like this: Bo Davis is way better at developing than probably recruiting. We'll just say it that way.
Well,
And he's really good at developing.
he's one of those dudes that he's going to be your football coach that you heard about in the 90s.
Yep.
Right. But it isn't. It's not really the same thing, Freelance. There's a nuance to it, right? And I get you. It's close, but there is a nuance to this, right? Bo still needs to hit on Simmons and McKinney. Those are going to be great recruiting battles, Ran. And
yeah, it is.
Even if he doesn't, super excited to see what he does with that defensive line for Texas this year. I think they're going to be operating at an elite level, or at least that's going to be where they're trending. That defensive line looks like it could be really fun.
If Colin Simmons goes to Texas and not LSU, he is literally doing the best troll job that we have ever seen.
That's true.
Hey, love to see it. But we're going to talk biggest questions of fall camp on Friday. We'll pick probably one or two conferences, dive deep into those, and then go from there. A lot of fun today. Guys, before we get out of here, PG, I'll start with you and then go into Jay. Where can the people find all your great stuff?
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Apple, Google, or Spotify, The PG Show, all one word, or you guys can follow me on Twitter, The PG Show _. Hey, Texas fans, I'd be happy to have you guys come along so I can give you guys a view from an OU fan's perspective, but be non-biased. And, you know, the fact that I want OU guys to beat you every year and what I think you guys are doing, because I actually think Texas is on the right track and Texas is doing the right things.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to say they're back, but if there was a time where I think they are a team you need to watch, this is the Texas team.
If they win 10 or 11 games this year, I think they're back because it's been proven year over year growth and success.
Yeah, love that. Jay?
You know me, Jay, Unfair Sports. You can just find me on YouTube. Like I said, my signature podcast, Unfair Sports, where we go into all sports, but we'll probably focus mainly on college football and NFL. That will pop up coming back weekly. I'm excited about being able to make time to do that, especially hitting the 10,000 mark. So we're going to do that. And you can also find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listen to. You can search Unfair Sports for that one, and then search Sooner or Later Sports for any OU fan that wants to hear college ball around just Oklahoma content. So I'll be doing both. That's going to be my life now up until January. Pretty excited about football coming back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. We are under 30 days. We're 27 days away from kickoff for Sooner Ball, but we're less than 4 weeks away from actual college football happening. I am stoked. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and guys, you already know we're finally back. July was all over the place. August is here. The studio is here. Content is just getting started. I got a lot planned. A lot of polls going to be running the rest of the week. Jay and I, we need to get together. PG and I, we need to get together. Chris is something else, though. Yes, he is. He pulled an Auburn helmet the last SEC Connect stream on me, and I'm less than pleased about that. So I'm going to figure out something to troll Chris. Hell, I might just show up in full Texas. I might show up dressed as Bevo one time just to troll Chris. We'll
grab
see.
the helmet and put it on like Lee Corso during the SEC Connect and throw him. Yeah.
You know what? We're going to do that. Y'all don't say anything to Chris. He's not going to watch this. PG, don't say anything to him. Jay, keep it under. I'm going to do just that to him. Until next time, guys, we'll be here Friday. We'll see you then. That's it. See ya.